The Trans Summit was born out of a need to center our voices in the conversations about us within the entertainment space. Every year, we explore emerging themes in trans storytelling and celebrate trans storytellers. This year's theme is intersectionality. Intersectionality acknowledges that our experiences as trans people are layered, and stories offer us a way to unpack those nuances by allowing us to imagine, to reclaim, and to witness trans lives, past, present, and future, in full bloom. This year marks 50 years since Stonewall, where trans activists like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera sparked a movement. This is a space to honor that legacy by creating a vision for our lives by us. And no one does that better than this year's incredible keynote speaker, a multi-hyphenated powerhouse. She's an actor, writer, producer, and human rights advocate, known for her groundbreaking role as Candy in Pose, and recently making history as the first trans actor to land 2 serious regular roles, an Outfest alumni, a modern-day trailblazer, and a personal hero of mine. Please join me in welcoming Angelica Ross.
How y'all doing out there? Okay, so listen, I think I'm gonna just have to, I don't think I can do this podium, so let's give you a Whitney Houston moment. So, there is so much going on out there, right? So much going in the world, so what are y'all doing here? Because I know why I'm here, but I hope that each of you know why you're here. This Trans Summit is an accumulation of a lot of people's hard work and a lot of people trying to amplify narratives of trans and non-binary folks. But we could not wait, we could not afford to wait for someone else to sort of create that pathway. How many of you are familiar with the story called Herstory?
Yes!
If you don't, you're late, but Herstory is an Emmy-nominated web series that was written and co-produced by Jen Richards and Laura Zach. And they just decided that, you know, they didn't see anything in media that was reflecting, and instead of just pointing out that glaringly obvious missing spot, they decided to fill it. And so that is, I want to talk about a couple things, because a lot of times I feel like people are waiting for someone else to green light, to fund, to give you permission, to do all these things. I want to tell you right now, you need none of that. And I know I'm telling you that right now from a different position. Girl's got a couple coins now. Right? But before the girl had coins, I was always putting my hands into things and investing in our community. And I want to talk about what investing looks like and sounds like. Because when it comes to investing, a lot of people know about investing, especially if you have money or these things. But if you don't have money, if you didn't come from money, sometimes you didn't really have that conversation about investments or invested interest, you know. And so what I want to talk about is, like, you don't always have to have money to invest. If you currently have a lot of time on your hands, that is going to be your investment. What are you doing with your time? Because you can choose to, you know, point the things out that other people are doing. Watch all the things that other people are doing. Ain't nothing wrong with that. But getting about the business of basically fine-tuning your perspective on this world, because your perspective is what's missing. When I found out that Candy Ferocity was going to be killed on Pose, I was devastated. And Ryan Murphy called me on the phone and he was just like, hey, let me just rip the Band-Aid off and I'll tell you what's gonna happen. But don't worry, you're gonna be on American Horror Story. I was like, oh! Woo! Well, that made it a little bit better, but it was, you know, it was a hard decision to come to. And when he asked me, when he talked to me about it, he was like, what is your response? And every response that I tried to get out my mouth was like, but why? But I don't, and every response I tried to come out of my mouth with, it just felt too familiar about the same response I was thinking about the trans women of color that are dying every week. Yeah. Why them? And so that's when I decided to go ahead and accept the responsibility of telling this story and this narrative, because I knew that it was going to, my DMs are exploded, John. And it's just from people from all kind of backgrounds who have been touched by Candy's story and will hopefully start to think about the Candies in their environment. So what I want to think about too is I came to Outfest, I was at another event and there was a short, I think a music video by the name of Worthy. I don't know if you got a chance to see that, but it was incredible. And they had trans designers who designed all the fashion that was in there. And it was a short music video. And I know that we here at Outfest, we do shorts as well, web series and shorts. But I want to drop a little nugget in your ear really quick. Because what's also missing in media are the micro blog, the micro media, the commercials. We all know that when it comes to commercials and selling things, a lot of times they're not selling to us. They don't have the intersectional lens to be able to sort of address what we need as people who are in the market that has money to spend, whether that is on a shaver or whether that is on a dress, right? So when you're creating things, don't wait for the opportunity. Oh, they need to be making trans-inclusive commercials. You should already be working on being the mastermind in trans commercials or, trans-focused commercials. Because by the time Hollywood gets around to wanting to do that, you're already the person that's the go-to to do that. Does that make sense? Yeah. So when you think about that, then it comes to, okay, what are our favorite brands and products and things like that? Because I'm going to say something that's slightly controversial for a moment, and like I ever say anything controversial. but trans people have typically had a bad taste in our mouth when it comes to volunteering and when it comes to kind of the LGBT movement at large, because y'all done skipped over us a lot and our needs. Wait your turn. There's a lot of things that we heard for so long. And look, so when we were fighting for marriage equality, that wasn't something that was our pressing issue. And we kept trying to tell you, this is not our pressing issue. And so then when folks want you to volunteer for the marriage equality, knowing this boat is not going in the direction that we wanted to go in, a lot of us didn't want to volunteer for your organizations. Especially because you wasn't hiring us. And we weren't working, well, we were, but working in very low-level positions that they weren't ever going to sort of promote you into upper management or anything like that. So there's a sour taste in our mouth when it comes to this idea around free work, because we do that stuff every day. We're doing a lot of unpaid work. But I want to make a connection here so that we learn that we can move forward more stronger together. Because when it comes to investing, sure, I would agree with you. I wouldn't invest my hours and my time and energy into a movement or into something that is not in the realm of what my needs are, what I'm trying to add to the world. But those things that are, shameless plug, trans tech, social.org. But when there are things like that will both give you an opportunity to feed into your community and give you a resume piece or a portfolio piece or whatever, or experience, then it's not all lost. Then maybe it's of value to you, because it's really of you to determine the value of your time and contribution, and you decide what you're going to contribute to and what you're not going to contribute to. But know that it's not a hard, fast rule. Because some projects we may be doing, I may do a project and have no money to do that project. Or a little bit of money. No, that's not, I don't know, we make that's all right. There's King Esther, have you heard of King Esther? Yeah. So King Esther is this project, and it's a passion project. Although it's going to look like there's a lot of money in it, because it looks really good, and we've got a great team of producers. We have the writer director Dui Jarrod here in the audience, and basically I said to myself, I want to invest in what's next. So as an actor, yeah, that's great, and I love being in front of the camera. Y'all, I know, listen, don't mess with my close-up, because I love it. But I'm also great behind the scenes. I'm a good behind-the-scenes person, and you gotta learn how to be a good behind-the-scenes person. To be a good behind-the-scenes person, you gotta understand it's a collaboration. Say it after me, collaboration. Collaboration. Yes, amen. I say it's a collaboration because you gotta understand that everything ain't gonna go your way. You're not gonna win on every little thing that we argue about which direction go this direction. There should be a threshold of common sense and things like that, so it can't be total chaos that you should check out if it's something that you need to check out on. However, for example, and this is kind of controversial, but I'm gonna do it anyway. For example, Candy Ferocity dying, right? Like, there were so many people who were like, I didn't want to see Candy Ferocity die, what have you. We were telling a very real story, and that's happening still today, And there are writers and directors and producers. There's a lot of people collaborating on the story. It's not my story, but I am an actor who was definitely willing to take on telling that story with them, because it was not close enough. It was on the money, and it was a fictional character too. So if we on the money, I would want her to live, because I would like to keep collecting those checks, please, and keep playing, in the story and being around our community and doing all those things. But I took it for what it was. I enjoyed that experience for what it was, and it was an amazing experience to be directed by trans people, by Janet Mock. When I would open my scripts, I was never questioning what was on the page, because my sister got it. So I didn't even have to question it. And then even if it was a push, I was going on her, because listen, if this is where she wants to push, then let's push. Because I'm supporting my trans sister's vision. This ain't my domain. I'm an actor. King Esther, I'm an executive producer on that. Now I got a little say-so, don't I? I got a little bit of say-so? Yeah, okay. I hope so, right? Okay. And I want to continue. Those of you that are out making projects, we would love to work with Ava DuVernay. We would love to work with Oprah. We would love to work with all of these people, right? But look around you. All these people that are coming to Outfest every year, creating stuff. Maybe somebody is just always creating white content. You're like, hey, listen, honey, that's great. I love that. And it's so beautiful cinema. What if we collaborate together? I love how you do this. I can bring my perspective. We can do this. We can, just find ways to collaborate with people, because you can't tell stories about communities and people if you don't have some kind of relationship to that community and those people. You tiptoe back over here, because I know I just indicted a few folks, but listen. But seriously, investment. We have to we're not asking for permission. We're not waiting for anything anymore. What I want you to think about is every second, every minute, every hour of every day. How are you investing your time? How are you investing your money? And not just in these outward things. Some of that is in developing you, so that you're ready to tell your perspective and your story. Take care of yourself. Self-care. Grow. Develop. Love yourself. Surround yourself by love, so that you can tell stories from a loving place. Even some of these hard to tell stories, it looks gruesome when we're telling things or whatever, but at the center of all that, I can see the love. I can see the love for our community. And that's what we need. People who are telling these stories, executive producers or directors, not just doing it for the bottom line, but doing it for the love. Thank you. started, get this party started, and start to look at these wonderful programs. I'm in like almost all of them, so you're gonna love them. But this first project I want to introduce is King Esther. This is my baby. This is the baby of the writer-producer. You want to come over here and stand up here with me for a second while I introduce this really quick? But yes, what this is about too is you'll see that I make an appearance in this. But the main star of this, Rowan, who's this black trans woman, this incredible star. And this is what it's about. When you walk in the door somewhere and you start getting your spotlight and your shine on and you doing your thing, that's cool, that's cute. But make sure you're opening the door for the next generation to come up, because there's a lot of undiscovered, untapped talent in our community. And Dui knew he just couldn't have a trans person in acting. He had to have somebody on the executive side too. You know, you can't just be creating situations where, as cis people, you're just over everything and over everybody. And then I'm gonna tell your story for you. Let me tell this. No, Dui's like, help me get this right. We need more folks who are saying and bringing people in and including people and saying, let's tell this. This is going to be me telling this story. And you got to respect that when people want to tell stories and do that, great. And when they want to reach out to you to say, but I want to do it right, will you help me? That's what collaboration looks like. Because guess what? I'm going to do another project where I'm doing this thing and I'm going to reach out to Dui and be like, hey, Dui, I got this story. Can you help me with this? Make sense? You want to say anything about King Esther?
That I love King Esther.
And we hope that you love it too. Thank you very much.
All right, so I first want to start with you two because of what we just seen with King Esther. Angelica, start us off by talking about like how you came to the project and what made you say this is something that you wanted to be a part of.
Absolutely. I was busy. I was busy doing something, and people were trying to track me down, and I was getting emails from several different people. I even think I got an email from the Trans Women of Color Collective, but just everyone was sort of reaching out to me saying like, hey, they want to reach out to you, you would be perfect to, be a part of this project. And so when I started reading the first scripts that they had sent to me and sort of seeing the stuff that they began to shoot, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, their piece is already here. And a lot of things that I choose that I want to work with, you want to work with projects where you know that you can show up to do your part and they can show up to do their part, so that you don't have to do all the parts. So that was really great because I saw that everything was there. But what I was thinking about, I immediately thought of the show on FX called Atlanta. How many of you ever seen that show?
Yeah.
Yes. And I immediately thought of Atlanta and how I stopped watching it because of how they went about including trans narratives. I felt that there was a lot of lack of responsibility, and then even when they tried to bring it into an academic space, it was like a white person talking about from a Caitlyn Jenner aspect, talking with this rapper guy who was basically separating blackness and transness as if they were mutually exclusive. And that was able to fly because of that conversation and that situation. But one of the things that I loved about Atlanta was just about how black it was and about how real it was or whatever, but it was leaving us out of that conversation. And when I saw the first aspects of King Esther, I was like, oh, this is Atlanta, but better. Yeah, I mean, if you give us, the time and stuff like that, it was just 2 episodes. But just saying that when it comes to trans folks, you think about Hurricane Katrina, it was something that affected the black community and poor communities across the board. And you're seeing how devastating it was. But then think about the most marginalized, even within that group. King Esther, Esther Papillon, and she's still trying to hold on to her dreams, and this hurricane is potentially going to sweep all that away. And how will then she bounce back from that? How do we as trans people bounce back from events that affect all of society, but we don't have the same coping mechanisms, we don't have the same resources, we don't have the same access? So when I saw this, I immediately knew that my newfound access was going to help bring this project to the light where it needed to be, because it was great. I think it was great.
Dui, what made you say this was a story that you wanted to tell?
Well, there were a couple of aspects. This was really like a personal affront for me to really like bring some healing back to a community that I know Black men have damaged. And I ended up writing a play about the family in general, and Esther was one of the ancillary characters. And whenever I would have readings in Brooklyn with the piece in New York, people were always like, it's good, but something's missing with Esther. So I did it as a personal exercise to see if I could write someone else's truth in a very authentic and subtle way. And it wasn't until I started to talk to like Dane, Figueroa, Edie, other beautiful trans women, I sent it to different organizations, and they were like, you have to actually do this. And so that's where the impetus really came from, and I just found a beautiful human connection with Esther, and that gave me the fortitude to move forward and create this piece.
So we're here talking, the theme of this year's Trans Summit is intersectionality. I feel like these are conversations that we always are involved in and always are having. And so from you all, I want to know, like, what's a part of this intersectionality conversation that, like, we don't talk about enough, that we need to be bringing more attention to?
Hi everybody, Miss Barbie-Q. I think we don't talk a lot about mental health. I think mental health is a huge part of it. Yeah, therapy. I think that's a huge part of being connected to who we are, understanding our transness, our non-binariness, and especially within the marginalized communities, we only go to therapy when we're locked up, you know, or we've already had a nervous breakdown, as opposed to understanding how do we take care of ourselves. The part of that self-care you said earlier is understanding our mental health.
I would even say that with the mental health situation, I think that we stray away from that a lot of times because of the stigma that's being trans in the beginning, that we already have some sort of problem. You know, so I would encourage us as trans people to sort of, you know, even still and yet and still take care of yourself, still talk about the challenging nuances of being trans. Because trust me, some days I feel like it's gonna drive me crazy, and it just really is the situation. But this is a process as trans people that's meant to fortify us. You know, the experiences that we go through, but it's great if you have help. Like, if you can get help, I'm looking for some help. I'm gonna have to do Talkspace or something because I need therapy.
For me, one of the questions that when I was emailed about being in this panel was, how do you connect to the main character, if there is any connection? And of course, as being transgender, I connect to her, and then a woman of color, and seeing all the things that she goes through, I can pinpoint, like, yeah, I understand that very well because I've been in those positions. Whether it's dealing with a family member that doesn't see you or looks down upon you, or in so many different ways. But I, as a creator, I often try to tell stories that I don't see being told. And one story for me is just to normalize the transgender experience. Like, we're always prostitute, we're always drug addicts, we're always the victim of a crime, either at the beginning of the film and that sets the story, or we end up getting beat up at the end and we get killed. And I just want to see a story about a transgender girl who's just normal. If, you know, like, not all of us are poor. And in no way, we're not here to throw dirt or shade at anybody. So please do not take this like, if somebody's telling that story, I'm not throwing anything negative at you. I'm just saying what I see that is lacking. Like, not all of us are poor. Not all of us are uneducated. Many of us speak different languages, and not just the white ones. A lot of us are, you know, I went to college, I graduated magna cum laude. Like, let's tell that story, you know, too, and I think that's very, very important.
Also trans men. But what I would say about the trans men conversation, because I want to say this every year that I come here, I have to say this with trans men, follow the leads, like, of Janet Mock and your who is it? Jen Richards. They saw something missing and felt like they were the ones who should have told that story. No one went to them and said, hey, I got some money, I want you to make this story or write this story. It wouldn't be right for me. I mean, again, I can take a space like Dewey and I'll say, hey, I want to do this story about trans folks, but then I'm going to have to bring some trans guys in and do that, and I can do that. But Girls Like Us, the hashtag Girls Like Us, that Janet Ma created that, and then girls found each other, and we were taking pictures with each other, we were doing outings, we were amplifying everything together. No one was doing this for us. So when people start to say, well, what about we did this. We did this. So I don't care if you're trans or cis, I'm not taking up a man's movement. How you doing? So, but I will support you. How you doing? But for trans men, I would love to see more trans, and I know they're there. It's about also connecting, yes, to funding sometimes, but also learning how to break through without it. Because that's not always the answer. The money's not always the answer.
I think there's a trans mask panel coming up after us, so hopefully we'll get some of those voices. My love with this wonderful ponytail that I want. Talk to me about being a creative, moving through these industries, and this aspect of collaboration that Angelica mentioned in her keynote. In terms of, like, you go into a space to help somebody tell this story, and the story ain't it. And there's some things, the intersectionality is not there. It's just a passing, prostitute type of character. How do you go about trying to assert yourself and move the narrative to something a little bit more, progressive?
Well, for me, hi, my name's Kwai. I'm just an actor, but for me, I like the sex worker narratives because I feel like it's reflective of a lot of the trans women that I know. And I feel like we can start to look at sex worker narratives through a different lens. There's a lot of respectability politics, and I know it would be great to see Black trans women and all types of marginalized people as CEOs and doctors in our film and TV shows that we watch, but that's not the actual reality. There's so many amazing, smart, beautiful trans women that I know, Black trans women that I know, and they're not fortunate enough to work in the media industry. They're not fortunate enough to have the same type of potential upward financial mobility that I have and that Angelica has. And so they oftentimes do turn to sex work like Esther did. And I love this depiction of Esther and her doing sex work, because that's a lot of time people have to do to survive. And not just trans people, but majority of Americans can't afford a $400 or $500 expense. It would completely bankrupt them. They wouldn't be able to afford their rent. And so there's a lot of, economic inequality within this country. And so, like you said, with trans women who are so marginalized, can't get a job, if you look a certain way, sound a certain way, Esther definitely, I think, exemplifies when we talk about, just discrimination and how access wouldn't be as available to her, which it would be to me, because people wouldn't know that I'm trans necessarily. But to answer your question, I've been really fortunate. I think because of the work that Angelica and Ryan Murphy and Janet Mock and all these great creatives have been doing, they've been really leading a movement and telling people, when you're going to create stories about us, do it with us. And the projects I've been able to work on, I worked on a film called Cam, which is about cam sex workers, and it was produced by Blumhouse, and an actual cam girl wrote it, which is just amazing to me. And she's not stigmatized, and it's multi-layered. And I think it's shifting, because back in the day when we talked about trans women being sex workers, it was just Jerry Springer. But now trans women who are sex workers in film can be the leads of TV shows and the leads of movies. And I think it's just changing. And it's because of the work that you and the people you work with do.
when you were talking, you reminded me of something that I heard the first time in these words that Alex mentioned a couple days ago at a screening of the documentary Changing the Game. If you have not seen it, you should check it out. But he said, nothing about us without us.
Yeah.
And I loved it because, you know, it rhymes and all that stuff. For you all, what do you see as like the next stage of this conversation that we're having about trans representation, about diverse representations in this industry? What's next for you? What do you want to see more of?
Well, I think that number one, just to piggyback on one thing you're saying, I agree that there's so many smart, brilliant women in sex work that we do need to tell that with a different lens, you know, to get the nuances of different kind of stories even within that. However, I do know like a trans doctor, you know, I do know a trans lawyer, and especially a black trans girl who's going through school right now to become a lawyer. That trajectory alone, you know, just of becoming, and also the next stage of being aspirational, especially for those who, like Janet Mock talks about, or Laverne Cox talks about how when they first started out, there wasn't anyone else to sort of look to that was doing what they were doing, so they had to sort of be that for themselves or create this thing. So now even like with Paige and Herstory being a lawyer, it's aspirational, but now I see another girl who's being a lawyer. So they may not be correlated, or they may be, you know what I mean? In the sense that we as a community deserve to have aspirational content as well.
Yes.
I personally would love to see more trans run, like what Rain Valdez does and stuff, of us training each other on how to produce and direct. I think that comes from within, because it's the profitability, right? It comes from money. So if we're the ones producing and writing and directing, we have a production house, you know, there's enough of us that we run cameras and editing and everything, and we start putting out our own content, then Hollywood and the rest will go, oh, let's just hire that production house to do it, or distribution and stuff like that, instead of us asking for the scraps of everyone else. We can go, well, we got our own network channel, you know, or online or internet or something. I mean, the possibilities now are endless. That's why I want to do everything.
I tell people that, of course, obviously I'm transgender, and transgender is not the only thing I am. I'm Dominican, I'm from New York, but before this whole transgender movement as we know it, 10, 12, 15 years ago, there was no transgender thing going on, nothing like today. And as a Latinx human being and filmmaker, I saw all of my stories be told by people who are not Latinx. And that really riled me. It really worked me, because to see a person who, specifically in my case, you're not Dominican, you're not from the Bronx, you're not from New York, you're somebody from Ohio, and yet you get the support to come into my community and tell a story right in front of my building that you know nothing about. I've been there 24/7, and I don't find the support to tell that story. You know what? I think that's really fucked up. Yep. And I think you know, like, it's time for even the festivals that celebrate these to start telling these filmmakers, you know, back off a little bit and let these people tell the story. You know, if I know what it's like to be there at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. I saw the guy get shot. I saw the guy get killed. You live in Ohio. You went to NYU, and you come into my neighborhood with 20 trucks, take over my block and tell your story, and go to these big festivals, win awards all over the place. So I lived that through years, for years and years and years. Now I see, I'm reliving that nightmare again with being transgender. Like, I am so tired. I don't care how good it is. Like, I'm really getting tired of seeing all of our stories, like 98%. I think the only feature film that I can mentioned that was written and directed by a trans woman that is about a trans woman is Sydney Freeland. Everything outside of that has been directed by a person who's not transgender, and on top of that, not of color. And that, like, if you want to get into an argument with me, like, tell me, like, did you watch this film? Because then I'll be like, oh, I'm just tired because, like, I tell people all the time, like, I'm here, I'm present, and no one is, like, looking at me, and Rain is in the audience, like, hire Rain to do that film, you know, like, hire me, hire, like, there's so many of us. You always go to the person that is not transgender, not of color, and I'm having a lot of general meetings where I'm being considered as a writer for television shows, and I'm grateful for that. And the boss is a person who's not transgender, not of color, and that's what the story is about. So I want to see that kind of die down a little bit. As human beings, we can all tell stories about one another, but because we have not been given the opportunity, I think until the playing field is more level, back away, move back, and then come back when it's level.
We've got to wrap up. I've got one last question that I want you all to answer. And Dui, I know you, I think, had something to say. So you start this off and we'll come down.
No, you can answer.
Well, you still got to answer this question too, so take the microphone. There's been a lot of shouting out of trans folks, trans talent, people that are doing things. We obviously know the Lavernes and the Janets of the world. I want everyone to shout somebody out who's doing something that you think we should be paying attention to.
I absolutely love Jill Soloway. I know she's non-binary, but I think the level of skill and craft that she brings to and humanity that she brings to all her work is absolutely wonderful. Of course, I think Janet Mock is just doing incredible work, and I'm so proud of the deal that she was able to secure as well. Like, she went and got the bag. So it's like, I'm just so proud of them. And, you know, honestly, I'm really proud of Angelica Ross, too. Yeah, just the trajectory that she's had over the time that we worked together on King Esther, just how far she's gone just in this amount of time is really amazing. And so it's nice to be able to appreciate people I don't know, but also to appreciate creatives that I do know as well.
I would shout out this amazing woman in the audience, Rain Valdez. She is the star, creator, writer, and I'm sure a billion other things of Razor Tongue that I got to see last night here at Outfest. And also Alexandra Gray, who is an amazing actress who's been in this business for years. She's also on Razor Tongue, so you should definitely check it out.
Oh gosh. Alexandra Billings, Zachary Drucker, Trace Lissette, Rain, of course, Haley Shahar, who's amazing. She's in Pose too. Lady J, who's writing for Pose. I mean, the ones who are behind the scenes and creating it too. I'm just loving it. You know, that guy in this panel, of course. You know, you too do it.
Because smoking weed in California is legal. I'm gonna give a shout out to India because last year I got to shadow on Pose. I was in the Ryan Murphy Half Initiative program, and she and I started talking. And I don't know how many of you know the Bronx, but I used to live on Valentine Avenue, and we were talking, and like I used to hang out on Valentine Avenue and 197th Street. I was like, yo, I lived on Valentine Avenue and 196th. And she was like, yo, I used to buy weed, da 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 da. I was like, yeah, I used to buy weed, da da da. And we started talking and we kind of like hit it off. And like, I never knew that going into this show, like I would meet someone who was basically from my block where I had lived and where I lived when I went to high school and all that. So that to me was, and she's doing amazing work, so.
I want to take a moment and shout out some behind the scenes folks. Like I know at Japan Faces, I think is her Instagram. She's a black trans makeup artist. Deja Smith, a black trans makeup artist. And I actually could name a lot more because I recently sent out a tweet asking for black trans beauty professionals, and I was overwhelmed with emails and DMs and profiles. And when I tell you, some of them are like doing makeup for major celebrities and just kind of under the radar a little bit, but they're not being hired like this by the industry. I've had to fight for things like getting, making sure Deja was my key makeup artist on Pose or doing certain things. So there are a lot of girls who actually, our makeup for us is like war paint in these streets. And some of us are masters at that, but we're never allowed to work at the makeup counters. With girls working at the makeup counters that can't do half of what these girls could do. You understand what I'm saying? And then when you were a gay man in the industry, things weren't always great for them, but then they became the gay cute best friend who could do hair and makeup, and were in salons and in makeup counters and things like that, where we still were not allowed to be employed or to have space. So now I'm all about everyone here that's creating content. There are trans people behind the scenes, makeup artists, hairstylists, grips and camera operators, and all those people who will never get their names in light like some of us that are in front of the camera, but they still deserve the recognition, the work, and the shout out. Yeah.
Can we get one more round of applause for